Hello, this is Derek Iswell, Chief Investment Officer for Shelton Capital Management with a Shelton CIO Minute. Today, a brief update on the health of our regional banking sector in the U.S. with perhaps a bit of a more global or international perspective. Deposit rates, deposit data came out on Friday, and the numbers really did nothing to ease concerns about outflows. It seems there is no easy solution to the issues we have with our regional banking sector. But perhaps one of the easier solutions is actually M&A. And if you view the issue from a global perspective, it makes a lot of sense. Our financial system is unique, and it may not be necessarily in a good way. If you look at the number of small banks in our system, it compares very differently from anywhere else in the developed world. The Russell 2000 index of small cap companies has 200 banks in it. So fully 1 out of every 10 companies in that index is a bank. It's a leftover from a time when interstate banking was forbidden or restricted in our country, and every state had their own competitive bank market. Now let's compare ourselves to Canada, albeit a much smaller economy, about 1/10 the size, but in Canada, everybody knows the names of the 5 big banks up there, notably because there are only 3 smaller banks other than those 5 in all of Canada. Similarly, Australia has 4 big banks, but beyond those 4, there's only 3 smaller banks in the whole Australian, publicly traded smaller banks in the whole Australian economy. Looking at some somewhat larger developed countries, Japan, a much bigger economy, maybe getting close to, say, half the size of the US, dominated by 3 large financial institutions. But other than those 3, they do have about 40 smaller ones, so a bit closer to the US. But on the other hand, we have Europe, which is similar to the US in the fact that it still has a large number of different independent countries, each keen to have their own competitive banking system. But even despite that, across all of Europe, there are only 47 publicly traded banks. And so the lesson from these data points is that a round of consolidation would not be out of question. Yes, these other nations do have greater regulatory burdens on top of the smaller banking systems. And it's not that they're not without issues of their own. The Credit Suisse debacle comes to mind. But their example can lead one to believe that a wave of consolidation could be in our future. For further information, don't hesitate to call or contact your Shelton Capital representative. This has been a Shelton Capital CIO Minute.